I realized it the second I reached into my coat. No wallet, no phone. Both sitting in the back seat of the yellow cab I'd just jumped out of like a hotshot. Habit of control, gone in one dumb minute. It was 5 minutes to midnight, Christmas Eve, Moynihan train hall, humming with delayed train energy, and I was standing at a kiosk trying to order the smallest black coffee they had, just to feel human. I had nothing. The barista, Lily, tag on her apron, 60-ish with sharp eyes and a cigarette voice, tapped the register without looking up. $3.75. I swallowed. I left my wallet. In a cab. My phone too. I just need... No tab, she snapped. Then she looked up, finally seeing me. Not as a person, as a problem. People in line started shifting. That quiet, neck-craning kind of shift. I could feel heat rising up my neck. I can sort it in 10 minutes, I said. 10 minutes ain't legal tender. She crossed her arms. My voice sounded thinner than I meant it to. Chest tight, tunnel vision creeping in, slow and clinical. The lights overhead seemed way too loud. Then she appeared, woman in navy scrubs, hair back in a ponytail, a little girl beside her in a red knit hat, both of them looking like they'd had a long night and weren't in the mood for drama. The woman stepped forward, slid a $5 bill onto the counter. Nobody should be stranded on Christmas, she said. It wasn't soft. It was solid, like a rule. Lily glanced at the bill, shrugged, poured the coffee. The crowd lost interest. I turned, flustered. You didn't have to. The girl stepped closer. Big brown eyes. Folded paper crane clutched in her mittened hand. You look like your stomach hurts, she said. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. I felt 23 again. Red-eared. Small. Quick note. Before we start, share in the comments, how's your day going and where are you joining from? Thanks, and let's continue. I stepped away from the counter, coffee burning my palm, took 2 steps toward the main concourse, where the ceiling loomed like an arena and the echo slapped back like a wave. Panic gripped me, my ribs locked. I braced a concrete pillar and stared at the floor. Couldn't think, couldn't move. Useless as a wet match. Then a tug on my coat. Rule of 3 breaths, the little girl said. In the nose, out the mouth. 3 times. I'll count. I nodded, because I had nothing better. 1, 2, 3. I followed her, like I was 7 too. Her voice steady. My breathing ragged at first, then smoother. By the 3rd breath, the ceiling settled back into place. The woman, the mom, I assumed, was watching me from a bench near the departure board. I didn't ask for help, but the words came anyway. I need a minute. She didn't flinch. Come sit. We've got a bench over there. We sat, steam curling from our paper cups. My hand stopped shaking. The kid handed me her crane. Temporary loan, she said. It's for brave breaths. I took it like it hurt to accept. Thanks. I'm Sophie, the woman said. This is Millie. Corbin, I said. Where you headed? Sophie asked. Nowhere I want to be. She looked me right in the eye and nodded, like she spoke that language cold. We're catching the 12:22 Lear to Woodside in Queens, she said. You can walk with us or not. I walked. No phone, no wallet, just a paper cup and a crane in my coat pocket. I was Corbin White, the guy who'd built an empire out of spreadsheets and steel, following a stranger and a 7-year-old girl through Moynihan, like they were the map, and I was just another lost soul in the crowd. The stairs up to their place groaned like they were protesting rent. 2nd floor, left door, paint chipped but hinges strong. Millie ran ahead, already unzipping her coat. I followed slower, still unsure if I belonged past the doorway. Inside, the warmth wasn't from the heat. That radiator knocked like it was working off a gambling debt, but the living room glowed soft yellow from a floor lamp patched with tape at the base. The smell hit me first. Cinnamon and toasted almonds. Something real. Something lived in. Sophie hung up her coat, turned to me like we were mid-shift change. Shoes off, hands washed, house rules. Millie chimed in from the hallway. No lying, no ghost stories before bed. Got it, I said, toeing off my boots. My socks didn't match. Somehow that bothered me more than anything else that night. Coffee and biscuit cake, Sophie said, motioning to a worn armchair with a tear down one side. Nothing fancy, I said. I don't want to intrude. You already are, she said, no bite in it. So sit. I sat. Millie lined up 9 paper cranes on the windowsill. She moved carefully, like each one had a job. Dad taught me, she said, like she was reading the weather. I make one when something good happens. She picked up a new one, red with silver edges, and set it gently beside the others. This one's yours, she said. I looked at Sophie. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. I was the kind of man who'd made his living controlling everything. Leases, code, time slots, negotiations. And now I was in a stranger's living room getting gifted a folded piece of paper by a kid who didn't owe me anything. Thanks, I said, and meant it. Sophie brought out a lopsided almond biscuit cake on a chipped blue plate. It's a little burnt, she said. It's perfect, I said. That wasn't a line. That cake was the best thing I'd eaten all month. I think I actually closed my eyes on the first bite. They asked me questions, light ones, where I lived, what I did. I gave the safe answers. Real estate tech, Midtown. I didn't say I'd founded White Prop Corp, or that I'd spent 12 years turning grief into a blueprint for control. Millie gave me a full tour of her world, shoebox of rocks by the heater, glitter wand from a dollar store, and a wall calendar where every few boxes had a tiny silver crane sketched in pencil. When the square gets a crane, she explained, that day mattered. What about today? I asked. She just smiled, still deciding. Sophie didn't hover, but she watched the way a person watches when they've had to patch too many things with not enough thread. At one point she asked, You got someone to call about your wallet and phone? I nodded. Yeah, I do. Donald could have had a driver to me in an hour with a backup phone and a card, but I didn't reach for the house phone. I didn't stand up. I didn't want to go back yet. Millie brought out hot cocoa in plastic cups, carefully added 3 marshmallows to each. 3 only, she said, serious as a judge. Why 3? Because it's not greedy, but it's still fun. Fair. Before I took a sip, she made me close my eyes and make a wish. I wished I could keep this exact warmth when I went back to my corner office and its silent, screaming walls. On the fridge, past the magnets shaped like fruit and lobsters, were 2 papers. One was a rent notice, the other a past-due utility bill. I didn't comment. She didn't explain. We both saw them. We both pretended we didn't. Money doesn't solve grief. I'd learned that the hard way, but part of me still flinched seeing it, like I should fix it just because I could. My hands itched with the urge to do something. I kept them still. Millie flopped on the couch and looked up at me. Want to come to my music show? When is it? January. A Thursday. It's my first one. School gym. Front row if you're brave, Sophie added with a smirk. I'm brave, I said. Millie stuck out her hand. We shook on it. She didn't ask if I meant it. I did, with everything I had. By the time the cocoa was gone and the last crane was tucked into its spot, the clock had hit close to 2 in the morning. Sophie handed me their landline. I called Donald and the concierge, gave him the log number, told him to meet me at 9 with a spare phone and keys. I stood at the door for a second before leaving, the paper crane in my coat pocket, my fingers gripping it without realizing. Sophie didn't say, "Come back." Millie waved like she knew I would. I stepped into the hallway and closed the door soft behind me. The air outside slapped my face, sharp and real. I walked back down the creaky stairs and out into the cold, breath fogging in front of me like smoke. Somewhere between 35th Avenue and the subway, I realized something I hadn't admitted in years. I'd gone quiet inside. Not peaceful, just empty. That night, I wasn't anymore. Donald was waiting in front of my building just like I asked, one hand in his coat pocket, the other holding a small cardboard box with a spare phone and keys. The street was quiet in that bleak early light when everything looks honest whether you want it to or not. He took one look at me and didn't give me the usual dry joke. "You good?" he asked, voice low, eyes sharper than he let on most days. "I'm breathing," I said. He nodded like that counted as a full medical report and handed over the box. I couldn't decide if the steadiness in his face made me grateful or ashamed. I tried to sleep after that. I failed. My brain kept running the night on a loop, as if it needed to memorize the texture of something simple, just to believe it happened. By 9, I was carrying grocery store eggs and a cheap bouquet wrapped in plastic back to Queens, like a man trying out a different life in borrowed clothes. My pancakes came out looking like coasters someone had dragged across a driveway. Millie howled with real joy, practically falling off the chair. She pointed with the spatula. "Chef Carbon strikes again," she said, and I took the hit because her laugh made the kitchen feel bigger than it was. Over the next 10 days, I kept showing up. It wasn't planned. It just happened. I walked up their cracked stairs with bags of groceries or nothing at all, depending on how much courage I had that day. I tightened a cabinet door after watching a how-to clip on my phone. I helped Millie sound out chrysanthemum, like I was taking the exam myself. I walked Sophie to the train for her late shift, and met her at dawn so she didn't walk home half asleep in the cold. Pieces of their world came to me in sideways comments. Her pharmacy tech pay didn't stretch far. PharmD loans stacked like bricks waiting to topple. The radiator that kept waking me up with its metal coughing wasn't a quirk. It was a warning that the whole system was tired. Sophie didn't complain. She didn't ask for anything. She ran her home like someone who had learned the hard way that pride was the only bill you couldn't let slide. And that's when the panic inside me clicked on. I did what I always did when the walls felt too close. I fixed. Quietly, surgically, recklessly. I had Donald pull public records on the building. Routine data, nothing illegal, but enough to map where the pressure points were. Past due notices screamed at me like fire alarms. I told myself I'd ask Sophie first. I told myself I'd sit her down and talk it through. Instead, I walked into my office, closed the door, and made the calls. One landlord, one property manager, one wire transfer that barely made me blink. By late afternoon, her arrears were cleared. A manager I'd never met phoned to confirm the tenant in Unit 2B was squared up. He said it with a grin in his voice, as if he expected a tip for good service. Then the deliveries started landing. Space heater, tablets, new books for Millie. I hit place order like it was muscle memory. I walked into their apartment with flowers like an idiot expecting applause. Sophie stood by the table holding her phone, eyes narrowed the way steel narrows under pressure. "What did you do?" she asked, voice too calm to be safe. I froze. I was helping. Her jaw set. "The manager called me at work. The bank pinged my app. You didn't ask. You turned us into a project without our permission. Who are you, really?" Millie was at a friend's place. Good thing she didn't see this. I said my full name, the one I avoided outside boardrooms. Corbin White. Recognition hit her slow and hard, like someone dialing up the brightness on a screen. "White Prop Corp," she said. "The app my landlord mutters about when rent jumps in other buildings. That's you." "I was the kid whose parents died in a car wreck," I said, voice cracking at the edges. "I built walls with code and leases. It's how I kept myself standing." That didn't earn me even a flicker of mercy. She pointed at the boxes crowding her doorway. "You don't get to buy my life. You don't get to fix us because your heart is rattling." The heat in my chest felt like shame soaked in gasoline. She told me to return everything. Every box, every receipt, every attempt at control disguised as generosity. I hauled the boxes back out to the hallway and sat with my back against her door until sunrise. The tile chewed through my coat. People stepped around me like I was part of the building. I texted Donald, "Freeze all transfers, reverse anything you legally can." He wrote back, "Copy," and didn't ask a single question. At 6:30, The door cracked open just enough to show her eyes. She looked exhausted and angry, and somehow still calm. "You're still here," she said. "I'm still here," I answered. "That was stupid," she said. "I know." She handed me a mug of coffee. The heat of it felt like permission and punishment at the same time. "If you want to stay in our life," she said, "you follow our rule. No surprises. Help only if we ask. If we don't ask, you don't touch it. Not our money, not our landlord, not our problems." "I can do that," I said, even though part of me knew it would be the hardest thing I'd ever tried to do. By noon, we were sitting at her tiny table while sunlight moved across the floor like a slow tide. I slid a written list across to her. Everything I'd triggered. Arrears credit, deliveries, notes from the landlord. Every line item of my arrogance in black ink. She circled all of it. We made the calls together. The reversals hit one by one. Confirmation numbers stacked in a neat column. The boxes went back down the stairs and into the return truck. The non-reversible rent credit stayed, not as leverage, not as a favor she owed me back, but as my apology. Sophie taped the last confirmation slip to a folder and shut it with a sharp click. I didn't say thank you. It wasn't the moment for that. I just grabbed the empty boxes, carried them out to the hall, and kept moving. We sat at her kitchen table that afternoon, elbows close, chairs squeaking when we shifted. The radiator let out a half-hearted knock like it was listening in. The light was low, and nothing about the moment felt ceremonial. It just felt necessary. She went first. No build-up, no cushion. "I'm Sophie, 31, pharmacy technician, PharmD student, widow, 1 kid. Pride is not a costume. It's what's left when the bills win." She didn't blink. That last line hit like a steel beam laid flat. I nodded. "I'm Corbin, 33, founder of White Prop Corp. I built an armored routine after I buried my folks at 21. I don't know how to be soft, but I need to learn if I want any life worth living." Her fingers tapped once on the table. Then she laid out her terms. "No hero moves. You ask before you touch our stuff, our money, our landlord, our calendar. If we say no, it's no. If you can't do that, walk now. We've done a loan before. We can do it again." I didn't flinch. "I can do that." "Words are cheap," she said. "Then I'll prove it expensive." That was the first time she almost smiled. It didn't fully land, but it hovered. Later that day, I told Millie the truth. All of it. Not the press release version. "I'm the guy who built the rent app your landlord talks about," I said. "The one with the stupid billboards and color-coded dashboards." She squinted up at me from the couch, chin on her knees. "Are you still coming to my show?" "Front row," I said without hesitation. "Then you're still you." She handed me a new paper crane, purple this time. "Loaner's expired. This one's official." I took it like it mattered, because it did. Back in my office that week, everything smelled like it was about to catch fire. Philip Morgan, early 50s, a smile that stalled at the cheekbones, had been circling us for months. Head of Morgan Meridian Partners, the kind of firm that whispered unlocking value while pulling the floor out from under you. He was buying our float, one piece at a time, through shell names and swap funds. Quiet, methodical. That type doesn't knock. They just show up behind you holding the deed. Donald flagged it first. He was sitting across from me at 8:20 a.m., holding a legal pad like it had teeth. "We've got volume patterns that don't match history. Might be Lang," he said. Trevor Lang, mid-40s, board seat, Midwestern manners and a handshake like a wet paper towel. He'd always played the patient capital angle, family funds, soft talk. But Donald didn't trust charm, and neither did I. "You think he's leaking to Morgan?" I asked. Donald didn't answer. He didn't have to. I felt my jaw lock. By Tuesday, Jasmine came in with a 3-page memo printed double-spaced, stapled tight, with bullet points like bullets. "Philip's circling," she said. "And we're stretched. You're not sleeping, and you're making mistakes." "I'm not making—" I stopped myself. She wasn't wrong. You can't straddle both without cracking, she said. CEO who stays late, or man who shows up in Queens at 6 p.m. for dinner. Both will break you. She stood there until I nodded once. Then she left the memo and closed the door behind her. I tried to split myself anyway. Thought I could do it if I planned tight and moved fast. Days in war rooms, nights folding laundry and helping Millie practice scales for her music class. I watched Sophie go to work and come back from it without complaint. I learned hair braids were harder than negotiating term sheets. I burned 2 dinners, broke a plate, and once fell asleep with a glitter wand in my lap because Millie handed it to me mid-sentence, and I blinked out before I could ask why. One morning we were on the subway platform, and I felt it again, that panic rising from my ribs like a fist. The echo got loud. My palms went slick. I didn't swallow it. I turned to Sophie and said, "It's happening." She didn't ask what I meant, just looked me dead in the eye. "Millie," she said, "give him the 3. Millie, steady as a nurse, took my hand and counted. 1, in, 1, out, 2, in, 2, out. The ring around my chest loosened. I could hear myself blink again. That was the first time I'd asked for help in the open. Not buried in a text or a coded favor. Out loud, in public. That mattered. Millie beamed at me after, like I'd passed some quiet test. Maybe I had. Back at home, I opened the calendar on my phone and blocked the date of her school show. Big letters, no overlaps, no excuses. Just, Millie, front row, 7 p.m. She made me pinky promise. I did. Sophie leaned against the counter and said, "Don't swear something you can't keep." "I can keep this one," I said. Saying it felt like standing still during a storm, like deciding not to flinch even when you know you might get hit. At night, I lay in bed hearing the board's voices in my head, Philip's slow threats, Lang's soft concerns, Jasmine's sharp warnings. And then, underneath all of it, I'd hear Millie's counting. 3 in, 3 out. It should have been easy. Pick the kid. But power sells itself as duty when it wants to stay in charge. It disguises itself as duty, as responsibility, as legacy. I was still learning how to ignore it, and the clock was already ticking. The day of Millie's show, my phone buzzed twice before I looked. The second buzz was from Donald. "Trevor says 6:30. Mandatory. Non-negotiable. They're threatening to back Philip. We could lose the board." I stared at it like it had teeth. I'd been courting those funds for 14 months. 14 months of late-night calls, early morning data decks, cross-time zone flattery. And now they were going to swing behind a hostile takeover because some Midwestern yes man told them I'd lost focus? I texted back one word. No. That was at 3 p.m. At 4:10, I cracked. "Just prep it," I told Donald. "I might join if I can." He nodded the way people do just before the hard part. At 5:05 in the afternoon, I stepped into a glass conference room with a bottle of water and Millie's name still sitting on my phone screen under Jim, 7 p.m., front row, all caps, all heart. The call started like they always do. Choppy intros, flattery from suits who'd never built anything, and Trevor Lang doing his professional aw shucks routine, laying out the stakes like we were teammates in a crisis. "We believe in your vision, Corbin," one of the fun guys said, "but fiduciary duty's real. Your company looks rudderless from this far out." I checked the time. The call was already bleeding past the half-hour mark. I tried to steer it. I tried to close. They stretched it like taffy. More questions, more concerns, more ways to make me defend my own existence. By 6:42, I was in the backseat of a black car, tapping my foot against the floor mat, like that would make the traffic part. "Gun it," I told the driver. "I have to be in Woodside before 7. He didn't ask why. He just hit the gas. At 6:58, we hit a roadblock on 9th. Construction. 1 lane open. Dead stop. I looked at the map, did the math, lied to myself out loud. I can still make it. At 7:11 in the evening, I was still in that car. I closed my eyes, and I could hear the opening song, the one Millie had hummed for 2 weeks while stirring boxed mac and cheese. I called Sophie. No answer. I called again. Nothing. I left a voicemail that sounded like I was reading from a manual while a stopwatch ticked. Hey, something came up. I'm trying to make it. Tell her I'm trying. Trying. Trying like that made it better. That's how you dress a selfish move in a nice suit. You call it duty. You call it strategy. You say it's for the future. At 8:30, I was back in my office. The call had ended with empty reassurances and a, "Let's revisit Monday." Cold coffee sat untouched on the corner of my desk. I turned my phone back on. There it was. A video. Millie standing on a painted riser in a red sweater dress, looking out across the gym with a paper program folded in her hand. She scanned the front row and saw nothing. She blinked twice, straightened, set her lines clean, hit her marks. Backstage, she cried into Sophie's shoulder and asked if she did something wrong. I watched that part twice. I don't recommend it. At sunrise, I stood in front of their door in Queens, with my hand flat against the frame. My whole body was still tight like I hadn't exhaled in hours. Sophie cracked the door just enough to make her point. Her face was unreadable, her voice even flatter than her stare. You taught her she isn't important. I know, I said. She didn't let me explain. Get off our porch. I can fix it, I said. She shook her head. We don't need fixing. We need you to stop lying. The door shut quiet. That was the worst part. No yelling, no drama, just the thud of finality. I stood there on the landing like a kid outside the principal's office, staring at my shoes, trying to remember how it felt when I still knew how to be useful. I thought about the last time I saw my mother's face. It was from the back seat of a police car, hands locked in my lap, her blood drying on the inside of my throat. I thought about the promise I just taught a 7-year-old not to trust. And that's where it hit me. There wasn't going to be a moment when it got easier. No perfect Monday, no tidy schedule where everything fit and everyone got what they needed. I either became the man Millie could count on, or I stopped pretending I was one. That decision landed sharp. I took the stairs down 2 at a time, pulled out my phone, and texted Donald. I'm calling an emergency board vote. Noon Monday. Tell Jasmine I'm stepping out of the CEO role. She's interim. It took him 40 seconds to respond. I counted each one. You sure? I wrote back. Dead sure. He didn't ask why. He just sent one word. Copy. I stood at the corner, watching a bus lurch past, and didn't move until it disappeared. Then I turned toward the station. Not to run, just to breathe. On the last Monday of January, the boardroom felt refrigerated, the chairs lined with neat, indifferent patients. 12 people, 2 carafes of burned coffee, and 1 proxy lawyer in the hallway pretending not to pace. Philip Morgan had his fingerprints on every piece of it. His tone, his posture, even the smug silence of Trevor Lang, who sat with a notepad and a bored expression like he'd already cashed out. I stood at the head of the table and got straight to it. 2 things, I said. I'm appointing Jasmine interim CEO and recommending her as permanent, effective today. I'm stepping into executive chair, limited hours. That hit with the sick quiet of metal underwater. Half the board blinked like they misheard. The other half stared at me like I'd just resigned in Mandarin. Jasmine didn't flinch. She had a clean folder, her hair tied back, and a face built for decisions. She didn't speak yet. Our bylaws give the executive chair the right to propose an interim with a simple majority, I said. My group holds 53% of the vote. This is happening. Trevor leaned forward, lacing his fingers like a game show host pretending to be thoughtful. Why now? He asked. Why today? Because I broke a promise, I said, letting it hang. Because I missed something that mattered. And because if I don't put up real boundaries, I'll keep choosing wrong. A hum passed through the room. Chair legs shifting, someone clearing their throat, one of the outside advisors scribbling something in the margins of their folder. Boundaries are how I keep my word now, I said, to people outside this room. I opened my second folder. And we're changing our approach to giving. Effective immediately, the company's community projects follow a new standard. No more top-down rescue missions. No more surprise grants or press-driven showcases. I slid a paper across the table. 1 page, 4 lines. Request only, no surprises. Dignity first. The family being helped sets the rules. That's it, I said. We fund what's requested, not what we think is best. If we can't do it that way, we don't do it at all. Trevor blinked. You're proposing emotion as policy. I'm proposing consent, I said. If that feels radical, maybe it's time we catch up. Jasmine reached for the sheet and read it once. No questions, just a small nod. Donald leaned back, arms crossed, watching the room like he was keeping score. The meeting wrapped with a vote. 7 yes, 3 no, 2 abstaining. Jasmine stepped into the seat like she was born in it. No applause, just gravity. After the room cleared, Donald stayed behind. He waited until the door latched before speaking. I found something, he said. 3 a.m., buried under trading logs. He dropped a slim folder onto the table and tapped it once. Time-stamped trades through a shell in Delaware. That shell ties back to a venture office in Chicago, owned by Trevor Lang's cousin. They're routing through intermediaries and feeding Philip quietly. I flipped the folder open. There it was. Routing numbers, timestamps, buy-sell pressure in small enough chunks to stay under radar, but not small enough to hide forever. How sure are you? I asked. 92%, he said. Jasmine came around the table and looked over my shoulder. We're not law enforcement, she said, but we can put light on it. I nodded. We hold for now. I need one more conversation before we move. Back in Queens that night, I knocked on their door just past 7. Sophie answered but didn't step back. She didn't invite me in. She didn't need to. I'm here to see Millie, I said. She turned and walked away without a word. I sat on the hallway floor and waited. A few minutes later, the door cracked. Millie's voice came through, quiet but sure. You forgot me for grown-up stuff. You're right, I said. I forgot. No excuses. She opened the door an inch, then more. I stayed low, eye level. I'm not the boss anymore, I told her. Jasmine is. I'll still be around, but not too much. I want to earn the right to sit front row at everything. She raised an eyebrow. Even boring things? Especially boring things. She narrowed her eyes like a lawyer. Pinky promise, she said. I held out my hand. She linked hers. 1 clause, she added. If you break it again, you have to eat a whole bowl of olives while I film it. I hate olives. That was real punishment. I accept the terms, I said. She smiled for the first time since the show. Sophie leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. She'd watched the whole thing in silence. When we were alone, she asked, Did you quit for us? I quit to be the man I told you I was, I said. I hope that's good for us. She didn't nod right away. Just stood there with her head tilted slightly, watching me closely. We'll see, she said. Nothing extra. Just that. That night I sat at the table and typed out the full version of the company's new standard. The first real page of something clean. No surprises. Opt-in only. Dignity before speed. The person helped sets the rules. I sent it to Sophie and asked if she'd look at it. She sent it back with line edits in red. Her version was sharper, less soft, better. For the first time in years, I slept without waking in the middle of the night. No adrenaline, no boardroom nightmares, just quiet. The next morning I walked into the office, opened the drawer, and took out my badge. Jasmine was already at her desk, reviewing a report with her sleeves rolled up. This is yours now, I said. She didn't stand, just reached for it and slid it into her drawer. If Trevor's dirty, we don't ambush, she said. No games, no press leaks. We do it clean, I told her. No other way. She gave one short nod, then turned back to her work. I walked out of the building with my hands in my pockets and no title stitched to my name. I had a new job now, and the first part was showing up. We kept it simple. No legalese, no corporate gymnastics, just a spreadsheet. Dates, trades, shells, mapped clean. Donald and I sat side by side in the small war room on 7, watching Jasmine read every cell like she was memorizing it for court. After 2 pages, she clicked her pen and drew a new column. "What's that?" I asked. "Who told us each thing?" she said. "If this ever goes outside the building, we need a clean audit trail. No mystery leaks." She didn't blink once while she wrote it. That's why she was CEO. Donald leaned over and murmured, "You still want to confront him yourself?" "Yeah," I said. "I need to look him in the eye." The next morning I texted Trevor Lang. Bryant Park, noon. No lawyers, just coffee. He showed up at 12:05 in a navy suit with the jacket unbuttoned and a scarf like he'd just stepped off a boutique ad shoot. We met in a glass-walled cafe half a block from the fountain. Too many witnesses to lie. Not enough space to hide. I didn't waste time. "I know about the Shell Fund," I said. "Your cousin's firm in Chicago, the time-stamped trades, the coordination with Philip. I know." He blinked like a faulty light switch. Blank. Then wide-eyed. Then the smirk. "It isn't about you," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Philip pays his friends. You just play harder than he likes." "Jasmine runs the company now," I said. "You're going to resign from the board before 5 p.m. today, or we go to every investor you're whispering to and show them public filings, matched against the trades and the Shell account. We don't need intent, just math." He tilted his head. "You bluffing?" I didn't answer. Just looked at him like a man who knew exactly where the line was drawn. "Assume I'm not," I said. He resigned at 3:14 that afternoon. We filed it clean. One short notice, no headlines. Jasmine kept the language dry. Philip's lawyer called the next morning sounding confused. Their math had changed, and they knew it. By the next board meeting, the hostile bid looked wobbly. Without Trevor feeding them inside pressure, they didn't know where to push. That gave us time, and time is blood in a company like ours. At 5:40 that evening, my phone buzzed. It was Sophie, Platform B. Now. She wants to surprise you. I didn't ask who she was. I ran like the ground was chasing me. Moynihan at rush hour was a hive. That tiled echo, that crowd flow like a current. I got halfway down the stairs before my chest locked. It came fast, too fast. That old invisible trap clamped down over my ribs and told me I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't be here. I froze. People brushed past me like I wasn't real. Then I felt a hand on mine. 3 breaths, Millie said, like she was calling a play. "Hand on the rail. Match me." She didn't shout. She didn't panic. 1 in, 1 out. I followed her. 2 in, 2 out. The air thickened. My lungs came back online. 3 in, 3 out. The train whined below us, and the sound didn't crush me this time. I made it to Platform B. Millie handed me an envelope folded twice and pressed flat. On the front, she'd drawn me, crooked tie, stubbled chin, with the words, "Corbin who shows up." "I made it for you," she said. "It's like a receipt." I didn't trust myself to speak, so I nodded and tucked it into my jacket like it was a legal document. Sophie stood nearby, arms folded, watching my face. She didn't smile, but she gave me a nod, the kind you earn, not the kind you get handed. Then she said, "We need to talk about the right way to help." I looked at her. "Say it." "The same rule," she said. "Ask first. Always." We found a bench with chipped paint and sat while trains hissed and groaned in the background. I pulled out my phone and opened a blank note. She paced it out like she'd been waiting for the moment. "Household and medical debt only," she said. "No splashy stories, no press releases, no public rescues." "Got it," I said, typing. "People apply. Small, fast awards. We follow up after, never during. Any exceptions? One, she said. Every family gets a human marker, something real. Millie clapped once. 100 cranes, she said. One for every family, with the date written on it, so they remember someone cared. Sophie nodded slowly. Each crane gets a card, numbered, signed by the reviewer. I didn't even hesitate. I want you to run it, I said. Name it, set the rules, I'll fund it, you steer. She didn't answer right away, just looked at Millie, who was now balancing on the edge of the bench, swinging her legs. Part-time, Sophie said, until I finish my rotation block. Then we'll see. She pulled a pen from her coat and wrote on the top of the screen. Quiet Ledger Fund. Because it's nobody's business, she said, unless the family wants to tell it. We rode the escalator back up into the street. The scent of burnt coffee trailed behind us. Announcements echoed through the station ceiling. It hit me right there. This was the same platform where I stood with nothing but a paper crane and no plan. The place where I'd said, I need help, and meant it out loud. That made it the perfect place to start giving it the right way. Within 3 weeks, the Quiet Ledger Fund had an EIN, a checking account, and 3 part-time employees, 2 caseworkers from a community clinic in Astoria, and an admin named Reese, who could juggle 5 calls without raising his voice. Sophie reviewed every intake form herself. We capped the grants low, just enough to stabilize, not enough to control. Sophie wrote the pledge in her own words and made every staffer sign it. No surprises, no press. Help is by request only. Dignity first. The cranes were brand new. This wasn't Millie's windowsill set. These were tied to the fund, numbered by hand. Millie insisted on writing each number in pencil. Crane 001 went to a retired bus driver named Victor, who'd spent his last paycheck replacing a leaking roof and didn't have anything left when his fridge died. We showed up with a replacement and the crane. He cried once, laughed, then cried again. I stood in the hallway holding a paper towel, wondering how on earth I'd spent a decade thinking ROI mattered more than this. Back home, I kept my word on the little stuff. Grammar homework with Millie, zipper surgery on her winter coat, Mrs. Patel's parent-teacher night in a library that smelled like dry glue and old plastic chairs. I missed one thing, a reading group meeting. I showed up late to the math fair with my tie crooked and every nerve showing. I told Millie the truth. I messed up. She handed me a juice box like it was penance. You came. That's what matters. The board tried twice to drag me back into the grind. Jasmine shut it down before I even had to speak. She's got the keys, I told Donald. And she knows how to drive. She moved fast. Cut the useless projects, slashed the worst fees. Usage climbed so fast we broke a weekly record without marketing. That was her win, not mine. And I liked it that way. Philip's bid started limping. Without Trevor slipping him intel, his friends started to feel exposed. Risk got repriced. The premium bled out. A week later, the vote came up short. Jasmine called me that night. We hold, she said. Go back to the real work. So I did. Crane 017 went to a home health aide named Rena. Her landlord replaced her stove, then demanded a cash tip she didn't owe. When she pushed back, he let the electric bill lapse. Our team got her through the complaint and paid the arrears. Rena taped the crane to her mantle with blue painter's tape and said it made her feel seen. I learned to ask before I offered. Harder than buying a building, turns out. Sometimes Sophie said no. We've got it, she'd say, and I had to sit on my hands. Do nothing. Respect it. That was the new kind of effort. Less grand, more grown. The press circled like they always do. We let the families lead the story. Some chose to talk, some didn't. When a blog post dropped some garbage about gold digger dynamics, I didn't say a word. Sophie didn't either. She just clipped the article, tossed it in the bin, and went back to reviewing crane applications. Millie kept count. We're going to 100, she told me in the car one morning, knees bouncing against the glove box. After that, we keep going. but 100 is special. Why's that? I asked. Because 100 is 3 numbers, she said, like that explained everything. One Tuesday morning, I was grabbing coffee at Moynihan when Lily, the barista who started all this, recognized me. She didn't say a word, just handed me the cup and slid a napkin across the counter under her palm. Next time someone can't pay, you buy quiet. I nodded once. That week, we bought quiet for 3 families, paid 2 electric bills and 1 heating oil delivery with no names attached. Donald came by for dinner on Friday. Sophie made pasta, and Millie set the table like it was a banquet. Donald brought a pie and a small paper crane he'd folded himself. Crane 51.5, he said. I figured it doesn't count unless I do the corners right. Millie held it up to the light and squinted. B-, she declared. Edge is crooked. He looked pleased anyway. Trevor tried a soft return through some third-rate intermediary. Jasmine sent back a formal letter so sharp it could have been a cease and desist. It wasn't. It was just clear. You're not welcome here anymore. I didn't need revenge. Didn't need a speech. Watching that door close cleanly was more than enough. Sophie leaned on the counter that night, glass of water in hand, and said, "You look like you finally exhaled." "I think I did," I said. She gave a small nod, and we left it there. The next day, Millie pulled out a new batch of paper and started pre-folding cranes. Just in case, she said. We were still in it. But this time, we were building it right. The cafeteria smelled like pencil erasers and heating vents. I got there 40 minutes early and picked the squeakiest plastic chair in the front row. Every time I shifted, it barked. I didn't care. 2 dads were tapping cards on their phones, half watching the doorway. A kid practiced scales in the hallway, flat notes echoing like ghosts through the tile. I just sat and waited. Millie spotted me before the first bell. She didn't wave. She pointed, dramatic, loud enough for 3 kids nearby to turn. "That's Corbin," she told them. "He keeps promises now." I didn't move, just smiled like a guy who'd survived his own worst habits. Sticky note in my head, never earn the opposite line again. After the show, we ate cafeteria pizza at a dented folding table. Millie tried to steal all the pepperoni. Sophie pretended not to see it. "You ever gonna fold a proper crane?" Sophie asked, wiping tomato sauce from Millie's cheek. "I'm improving," I said, holding up my latest try. She raised one eyebrow. "Barely." Crane 051 went to a woman with 2 part-time jobs and a 5-year-old boy who needed a new inhaler every month. Her heat had been off for 3 days, and her fridge sounded like a cement mixer. When we showed up, she thanked us 4 times before we even sat down. Millie offered her the crane and asked if she could tape it to the fridge. The woman nodded, eyes glassy. "I'll remember this day," she said. "That's what it's for," Millie told her. Some nights Sophie would crash on the couch mid-slide deck, laptop glowing against her cheek. I'd cover her with the quilt from her bedroom and shut the screen. I didn't touch her calendar, didn't try to solve anything. I just made space. One packed morning on the 7 train, panic curled around my chest again. I told her straight. "I need 30 seconds. She pressed her palm flat against my sternum and said, "Count with me. 3 in, 3 out." We did. In a crowd, surrounded by people pretending not to stare. We didn't care. Jasmine called the following Tuesday. Simple words. We're through the mess. Phillips moved on. Donald's on vacation. He sent a photo later. A quiet lake, a canoe, no caption. First time he'd taken real time off in 6 years. I didn't check our stock price for 2 full days and lived. Millie added a new rule to the quiet ledger wall. "When we get a thank you note," she said, "we pin it to the map." She placed little crane stickers where each family lived. Queens, Yonkers, Long Island, one in Buffalo. We didn't post photos online. That wall was ours, not the world's. I took Sophie out. No restaurants, no fanfare. Just soup in paper cups and a bench along the Hudson, our coats zipped, sneakers scuffing the path. We didn't talk big talk. Started with weather, then books, then fears. I told her how loud rooms still made my ears ring. She said she wanted a rural placement for part of her residency. Fewer sirens, more sky. On the way back, a violinist played a slow, aching version of a carol near the waterline. Millie would have called it movie music. Sophie slid her hand into mine. "You're softer," she said. "Still you. Just softer." I nodded, throat tight. "I'm trying." "Don't stop," she said. We went back to Moynihan one night just to sit, watch the arrivals, hear the garbled announcements that used to spike my blood pressure. Now they just sounded like life. The escalator rattled. The wind tugged at our sleeves. And I realized this place, this noisy, fluorescent, impossible station, was where I stopped pretending I didn't need anyone. I watched Sophie sip coffee, sleeve pushed up, wrist bare. I started thinking about a ring. Nothing loud, no billboard diamonds, just something solid. Like this life we were patching together. Quiet, slow, and real. Millie ended up solving it for me without knowing. But that's the next part. I picked the spot on purpose, right where everything had started for me. The same grimy coffee counter at Moynihan, announcements crashing into each other like bumper cars, the whole place buzzing with missed trains and bad cell service. Lily was working, hair in a knit cap, no questions in her eyes. Millie ordered 3 hot chocolates and leaned over the counter like she ran the place. "Extra whipped cream, for ceremony." Lily snorted, grabbed the can and said, "Pay first." I did, back where it started, on purpose. Sophie stood beside me in her long coat, hair pulled back, tired eyes bright under the station lights. "Why here?" she asked. "Because this is where you bought my coffee," I said, "and where I finally asked for help like a grown man." We found a bench away from the entrance. She was about to sit, but I stayed standing. She knew. She blinked twice, fast, but didn't say a word. I told her what I'd learned, what she taught me. Ask first, help only by request, and put dignity before speed. I told her I was still clumsy and too loud sometimes, but I'd keep showing up, that I'd earn my place every single day until I ran out of them. Then I pulled out the ring. No diamond, no flash, just a smooth silver band with a tiny crane etched inside. You could only see it if you looked close, only feel it from the inside. Millie gasped so loud the couple next to us flinched. "That's our bird!" she yelled, bouncing. I looked straight at Sophie. My voice stayed steady. "I don't want a rescue or a movie. I want a life. With you. With the kid who taught me to breathe again. I want to choose you both every morning, and earn the right to tuck you in every night. Will you marry me?" Sophie covered her mouth. The tears came fast, but she didn't fall apart. She laughed, quick, short, surprised. "Yes," she said, "but we keep the rules." "Yes," I said right back. "We keep the rules. You set the standard. I follow it." Millie pulled something from her pocket, one of her folded cranes, not numbered, not part of the ledger wall. She set it next to the ring box. "Family standard," she said, like it was a law now. "One crane for every family we help, starting with us." Lily wiped her eyes with a napkin and barked, "Go sit, you're blocking the line." We did. The 3 of us on a cold plastic bench under the arrivals board. No violins, no spotlight. Just the noise of the world continuing, and the warmth of something solid in my chest. Sophie slid the ring on her finger like it had always been meant for that spot. Like maybe it had been waiting there the whole year. Later, when the Quiet Ledger Fund hit Crane 100, we mailed every family a handwritten charm with the date stamped in silver. No press release. Just a note that said someone saw them, helped because they asked, and remembered their name. Sophie managed the mailing herself. Millie helped with stamps. I stayed in my lane, steady, front row, breathing. Corbin who shows up. Quick question before you scroll. What's the one promise you've broken that still sits heavy on your chest, and what would it take to make it right? If this story hit something real for you, please tap hype to help it reach someone else who might need it. Don't forget to subscribe and like. It's just one click and it means a lot to us. And drop a comment below, even just good story or what part hit you hardest. We read them all. Love you guys.